Let's start with that simple, powerful, and perhaps frustrating formula, but cortisol plus insulin equals visceral fat.
Cortisol, as we know, is our primary stress hormone. Insulin is the hormone that manages the fuel from our food. And visceral fat, well, that's the dangerous, stubborn fat that wraps around our organs, deep inside our belly, and which becomes a major health concern, especially as we get older. Stress equals cortisol. That part is simple. But what if there was something you could do, a simple pattern interrupt, that could just stop that stress? Now, if you were to dedicate your entire life towards being completely stress-free, you'd have to go live in a monastery somewhere. Forget about the rest of the world. And honestly, you might not be equipped to handle real life anyway. That's not a realistic solution for any of us. But what if you could just do simple things? What if there were simple strategies that would stop that cortisol spike at night? Because that's the real problem. That's the danger zone. When cortisol is high in the evening, right when you've had dinner and your insulin levels are also high, you create the perfect storm for fat storage. If you could stop that spike, then maybe, just maybe, you could stop the accumulation of that visceral belly fat. So in this video, I want to explore this idea. We're going to look at the evidence, which shows that as little as 200 milligrams of a simple, natural compound can truly cut cortisol. And this isn't based on guesswork. It's based upon salivary cortisol testing, measuring the actual hormone in people's bodies. We will cover that in detail. But then, I also have two other tips I'm going to give you, just like in the original video you saw. One is just a simple spice that you could use from your own kitchen. And another one is a little bit more of a habit, or a tool that you can implement in the evening time, and it costs absolutely nothing. Let's get started. The main compound we're talking about here is theanine. To be more specific, L-theanine. This is a natural amino acid found almost exclusively in green tea leaves. This is the very reason a cup of high-quality green tea can make you feel both alert and calm at the same time. But to get the 200 milligram dose we're seeing in the studies, you'd have to drink an enormous amount of tea. So for this purpose, we're talking about it in its supplemental form. Now, there are certain times you may not want to use it. So we'll get into when to use it, how to use it, and when not to use it. Because, as the original video pointed out, it can sometimes backfire if used at the wrong time. So why is theanine so fascinating? Because it is one of the very few substances that can easily cross the blood-brain barrier. This means it can get directly into your brain to do its work. And what does it do when it gets there? It primarily influences what's called a GABAergic state. Let's break that down. GABA, spelled G-A-B-A, is your brain's primary inhibitory neurotransmitter. That's a fancy way of saying it is the brakes for the speeding brain. Think about your brain as a car. All day long you have accelerator neurotransmitters. Think about this, worry about that. Don't forget this. What if that happens? Go, go, go. As we get older, many of us find that our brakes aren't as strong as they used to be. The biggest complaint I hear is, I'm physically exhausted, but the moment my head hits the pillow, my mind starts to race. I'm replaying conversations from the day. I'm worrying about my kids, my finances, or that doctor's appointment next week. That is a brain that is stuck on accelerate. That is a brain that needs its brakes. GABA is that brake. It's the neurotransmitter that says, hush, it's quiet time, slow down. It stops the brain from going into that crazy overdrive and helps it pump the brakes, allowing you to feel calm and relaxed. Theanine has a tremendous positive impact on your brain's ability to use GABA. But now, scientists are starting to see there are other mechanisms too, and this is how it directly affects cortisol. Scientists are starting to uncover that theanine seems to influence your serotonin receptors. Now, keep in mind, serotonin is what makes you feel calm, cool, and that all is well feeling. It's that sense of well-being, that everything is copacetic and good, as the original host put it. Think about it. If you genuinely feel that all is well, is your body going to be stressed out? No. Your brain won't send the emergency signal to your adrenal glands. And if there's no emergency signal, your body doesn't produce that flood of cortisol. If you influence serotonin receptors as theanine does, you make it so that your own natural serotonin, the serotonin you already produce, has a stronger and more effective bond. It hits harder, as the original video said. It makes you feel calmer, which consequently lowers your cortisol, which consequently stops that terrible equation, high cortisol plus high insulin. This breaks the cycle. It stops your body from going into that unique physiological state, that perfect storm, where you're stressed and you have fuel on board from dinner. Think about it from an evolutionary perspective. That state would almost never happen. You would usually be stressed as an impetus to go get food, meaning you'd be stressed when you were hungry. You wouldn't be stressed while also having an abundance of pasta and food in your stomach. That's a modern problem, and it requires a modern solution. Now, you're probably here for the science. Let's look at the studies the original video mentioned. There was a study published in Neurology and Therapy. This one is wild because they took human beings and they deliberately put them under stress. How? By giving them a math test, a certain kind of cognitive test that would definitely stress me out, and probably you too. So imagine you're in this test. Your heart is pounding. You're trying to focus. You are manufacturing cortisol. Then what they did is they gave them either 200 milligrams of theanine or a placebo, a sugar pill. The results were astounding. The theanine group had significantly lower salivary cortisol. This wasn't just a feeling. They measured the physical hormone in their spit. And just as importantly, that group also reported feeling less subjective stress from the test in the first place. This is exactly the pattern interrupt we've been looking for. We don't all have time to meditate for 60 minutes. We don't all have the time or the luxury to go sit in a sauna every evening. But we can find simple, effective pattern interrupts. I'm not saying this is a super quick fix for all of life's problems, but it's definitely something that is proven effective against the physical response to stress. Now, there was another study that was even more interesting, especially for those of us over 60. This study had subjects take 400 milligrams of theanine for 28 days. First, their perceived stress, how much stress they felt in their daily lives, went down by 18% in the theanine group. That alone is a huge win. But here is the most important part. It improved their sleep architecture. That's a term researchers use for the quality and structure of your sleep. As we age, our sleep architecture often starts to crumble. We spend more time in light sleep, and we struggle to get into the two kinds of sleep that really matter: deep sleep and REM sleep. The study found that the participants taking theanine had less of that useless, fragmented light sleep, and were getting into more of that vital, deeper sleep and that REM sleep. Why is this so critical? Deep sleep is your body's physical repair shop. This is when your body repairs tissues, heals, fights inflammation, and locks in memories. REM sleep, rapid eye movement, is your brain's repair shop. This is when your brain cleans house, processes emotional experiences, and consolidates new learning. If you are not getting enough deep and REM sleep, you're not truly healing, and you will wake up feeling foggy, sore, and unrested. And here's the connection. I think we forget that cortisol is directly related to our sleep-wake cycle. Your sleep quality has a huge impact on your cortisol levels the next day. If you sleep poorly, you wake up and your cortisol is already dysregulated. It's elevated at the wrong time. And I hate to break it to you, but cortisol elevated at the wrong time is a significant problem. It absolutely influences the calories in, calories out equation, because it makes you want to eat more, especially junk food, and it makes those calories you do eat go to the wrong place, namely your belly. So we have to look at this. Improving sleep architecture is a profound cornerstone benefit. Now, what about when you shouldn't take theanine? Are there any times that you don't want this to really happen? At the end of the day, this could be beneficial across the board. The only time I really wouldn't recommend taking a bunch of theanine is when you have to do a major cognitive task that requires sharp, almost anxious focus. I found that theanine works well at a lower dose when you're using your brain a lot. But if you start taking it at a higher dose, like 400 milligrams or more, when you're trying to use your brain and focus, that higher dose almost puts you into too much of a calm state. You feel relaxed, which is a wonderful thing in the evening. But it might not be what you want when you're trying to, say, do your taxes, cram for a test, or navigate a difficult conversation that requires you to be on your toes. But for our purposes, calming that evening cortisol spike, quieting the racing brain, and preparing for sleep, it's perfect. For this, 100 to 200 milligrams about an hour before bed is a wonderful sweet spot. It doesn't knock you out like a sleeping pill. It just quiets the noise. Okay, we've talked about the theanine to cut the cortisol side of the equation. What about the insulin side? Here is another quick trick that's more metabolic. It's fascinating, and it works hand in hand with what we've just discussed. The answer is cinnamon. Yes, just 3 grams of the stuff, about a teaspoon. We've seen in the literature, but you could probably get by with less, has an impact on what are called insulin mimetics. That's a fancy term. Mimetic means to mimic or to copy. So, cinnamon is mimicking insulin. It's helping your body do insulin's job without your body having to produce so much insulin. Here's how it works. When you eat dinner, especially a dinner with carbohydrates, your blood sugar goes up. In response, your pancreas releases insulin to act like a key, unlocking your cells to let that sugar in for energy. But as we get older, our cell locks can get a little rusty. This is called insulin resistance. Because the doors aren't opening easily, your pancreas panics and shouts, releasing a flood of insulin to force the doors open. It's this flood, this massive spike in insulin, that's the problem. Cinnamon acts like a helper. It helps mimic the action of insulin, making your cells more sensitive to it. This means your pancreas doesn't have to shout. It can just use a normal, quiet inside voice, releasing a smaller, gentler amount of insulin to get the job done. That's right. Simple cinnamon can lower your glucose, and it can change the architecture of your glucose and your insulin dynamics. This means that if you do have an insulin spike, you have less negative metabolic activity going on with it. Remember, the big thing that you do not want, the perfect storm for belly fat, is a spike in insulin along with a spike in cortisol. We've discussed how you can cut the cortisol down with theanine, but now we're adding an extra piece into cutting the insulin down with cinnamon. Because maybe you don't want to cut all carbs out of your evening meal, and now you don't have to. But this is a critical addition. You must know what kind of cinnamon to use. This is especially important for our age group. The cinnamon you typically buy in a shaker at the supermarket is called cassia cinnamon. It's dark and has a strong, spicy flavor. Cassia cinnamon contains a compound called coumarin. In high doses, like a teaspoon or more every day, coumarin can be very hard on your liver. Even more importantly, coumarin is a natural blood-thinning agent. If you're one of the millions of Americans taking a prescription blood thinner like warfarin, adding a lot of cassia cinnamon can be dangerous. The cinnamon you want to look for is Ceylon cinnamon. It's often called true cinnamon. It's lighter in color, more fragile, and has a sweeter, more delicate taste. Most importantly, it contains virtually zero coumarin. It is the safe, effective choice for this metabolic trick. Please, check your labels. So, we've talked about theanine for cortisol. We've talked about cinnamon for insulin. What's the third thing in this whole toolkit? Well, this is a very simple one. It's one that makes me sound like a woo-woo witch doctor weirdo. But check this out. The third tool is simply going out and getting your feet on the earth. This is often called grounding or earthing. I know, it sounds strange, but we have evidence. We have evidence that just for a few minutes of connecting with the earth, that simple skin-on-earth contact literally changes inflammatory markers in the body, and it literally changes salivary cortisol. We are electrical beings. Your brain, your heart, your nervous system, they all run on tiny electrical impulses. The earth itself has a natural, subtle, negative electrical charge. For all of human history, we were in constant contact with it. Now we wear rubber-soled shoes. We walk on insulated carpets and hardwood floors. We are unplugged. Grounding is just plugging back in. And if you look at some of the neonatology studies on newborn, premature babies, this is where the evidence gets incredible. They've seen that when they take babies that have been in the neonatal units under incredible stress and they ground them in their incubators, their skin voltage changes. Their stress levels change. It doesn't matter who you are, how scientific you are, or how not. At the end of the day, we are beings on this earth, and we are probably designed to connect with the frequency that is the earth. That's not woo-woo. That's physics, and it's just the simple way that it works. So, what does this mean for you? Go outside for 10 minutes. Maybe after dinner, as the sun's going down. Take off your shoes, take off your socks, and just stand on the grass. Stand on the dirt. Stand on unpainted concrete. Asphalt and wood decks don't work, as they are insulators. Just stand there. Do some breathing, chill out, talk to a friend. For a few minutes, a couple of hours before bed. That can make a big difference. It helps your body exhale the stress of the day and helps that cortisol rhythm come back to normal. So, there you have it. 3 simple, powerful tools to break that nightly fat storage cycle. Thank you for watching.